Yes, and thank you people for coming back. And we were right in the middle of a really good discussion. And we're talking about fire safety today and how it applies to small businesses, because small businesses are being prosecuted at an alarming rate. And we're here to discuss how we can comply with the law. Now, what this law is actually about, it's about fire not having taken place. So it's about all the procedures that you have put in place, and there's lots of policies and stuff that you can adapt towards that, but this is when there is no actual fire. If, God forbid, there is actually a fire, then we have a whole new different set of laws that kick in for that. So Ian, we were talking about, you're going into premises and you have the legislation behind you. Yeah. But what if somebody just turned around and said, look, I don't want you to come in, what are you going to do?
We carry a warrant card.
Do you?
Yeah, I've got mine on me.
Really?
Yeah.
So you actually carry it with you all the time?
I carry it with me all the time that I'm on duty because I'm warranted to deal with fire safety situations. And the warrant card consists of photo identification, accompanied by the one on my name badge, and actually a warrant here that says exactly what I am entitled to do. And amongst that those entitlements, it entitles me to enter any premises, or any business premises in this case, at any reasonable time. And that any reasonable time means when the business is open. So if it's a traditional office, it'd be between 9 and 5. If it's a restaurant that opens in the evening, it could be up to 11 o'clock at night when they're open.
I think we've got it up on screen now, so if you could flick it over and show us the photo ID so people actually know that, what IDs actually look like.
A photo ID will look, that's an old ID, but it will look something like that on the badge. Most fire and rescue services, most officers will carry a badge that will look something like that, and also on the back of it will actually have who to contact if you think that the badge holder might be fraudulent. So for example, our fire and rescue service headquarters or our control room out of hours.
Okay.
And it does mean that yes, we can turn up unannounced, out of the blue, and ask to have a look around the premises.
Do all your team members have that?
All of my team members carry this. Now, operational fire crews as well in some areas are able to do so, and will have a warrant, and those are crews who ride the fire engines. Likewise, crews that ride the fire engines can come in under different legislation as well, and all of the people that can enter under legislation are trained and know which legislation they should use.
So basically, if your business runs halfway through the night, then you can quite reasonably come in halfway through the night?
Halfway through the night, yes.
So is your job 24 hours, so to speak?
We have officers on call, so if somebody does ring up at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night saying that they think a venue is unsafe, we can go out and we can send officers to have a look at it.
So I'm just like, trying to think of things here. But, suppose you showed your warrant and somebody says, you know what, forget this, it's 2 o'clock at night, what are you going to do? We're not listening to this. Do you have any extra powers? Do you call the police in or something, or what happens then?
The best thing to do is to talk to the owner.
Yeah.
But if we're refused entry and we have reason to believe and something subsequently comes up, it doesn't always show them in good light.
Okay.
We don't very often get owners that are uncooperative or business managers that are uncooperative at that time. But yes, we have other opportunities available to us, including court injunctions, to be able to visit the premises.
I think we've got a really good leaflet that we were looking at in the break. So if we could just show our viewers that as well. We're just trying to bombard you guys with information today because we're lucky we've got Ian in the studio. So
what we have here is this was produced just after the fire safety order came out in 2005 about keeping your premises safe from fire. This is available to download from the community and local government website, which is www.communities.gov.uk, and this is a very short guide, as it says, to making your premises safe from fire, to stopping fires happening and to protect people in the event of a fire occurring. It does point you in the direction of other information, so it's no good just to have read this and so, well, I've read that. You might need to look at other guidance as well.
Can we just talk about this fire risk assessment, which happens to be the key to good fire safety policy?
Yeah.
So what's the main thing about fire risk? What is it? Is it a sheet of paper? Is it an actual piece of, furniture? What is fire risk?
It can be anything. Okay. If you're a small business and you're employing less than 5 people, you don't need to keep a written risk assessment. So you could just go around and use common sense on a building. And for a lot of small businesses, with a bit of common sense, that will probably suffice. However, once you start getting bigger, or you're employing people under the age of 16, or it's in connection with a licence or some other conditions, then you generally need, or you will need, a fire risk assessment. Now, a risk assessment can be in any format. If you ask anybody in the health and safety world, they'll tell you about 6 different ways to do one. But in the fire service, we ask for 5 simple steps. The first step is identify your fire risks. Secondly,
so when we say identify fire risk, what does that actually mean? What are we talking about? Do we need to know which door to jump out of or which window to jump out of? What is that?
The fire risk is what's likely to cause a fire in your business or premises. So it might be if you've got a catering business, if you've got frying equipment or cooking equipment, what that could do if it spreads. If you've got a restaurant business with candles, it's that. If you've got a laundry, a boiler area, anything like that, it's what can actually cause a fire to spread within the building and take hold.
The key question is who's actually responsible? Because we've had these questions, from viewers on our Facebook especially. So what we'd like to know, so when you go into premises, we have a manager who has the responsibility of health and safety staff, whilst the owner, is engaged with maybe say a multitude of other businesses, so he's passed on his responsibility to the manager. Or then obviously we're talking about buildings and making ceilings and joists and stuff. Or is it the actual landlord? So who's actually responsible? Who actually what happens here?
Depending on the circumstances, any of the above and more people besides. So for example, if it's a small medium enterprise where the owner also has day-to-day control, then they would be the responsible person. It all hinges around who is the responsible person, and that is very clearly defined in our fire legislation. And the responsible person is the one who generally has the day-to-day control and day-to-day management. It could, however, be part of the company. For example, does the company have a policy? So sometimes we will prosecute an individual, other times we'll prosecute the company. So for example, London Fire Brigade have prosecuted New Look and Shell Oil, not necessarily an individual, but where you get that sole director, then it becomes that individual as well. Because
we have a lot of restaurants and grocery stores which are now expanding and they're franchising perhaps, or they're operating under their own brand. So it would be just about everybody that's involved in that.
It could be, yeah, it could be. It's not necessarily, it will be everybody, but you might find that there's a policy gap, or they haven't got the right procedures from within the whole company. Or it could be that they have, but they're not being implemented at that particular site, in which case it could be that particular manager that's at fault, or even a duty manager. Just last week I actually gave a formal caution under law to a duty manager. The rest of the chain of fire safety management had been put in place. However, this duty manager failed to do one key aspect of that, and he was found at fault and issued with a caution. The other thing that we have for this responsible person is it could be anybody by virtue of contract or tenancy. So it could be the landlord if a contract says that the landlord's responsibility is to maintain a fire alarm. It's the landlord or owner's responsibility in common parts of a building occupied by lots of different entities. It might also be a fire alarm engineer if, for example, they've got a contract to maintain a fire alarm system, they haven't done so and have jeopardised somebody's risk, or jeopardise somebody's life and putting them at risk. So this responsible person is a multitude of people. Quite often, when anything goes wrong, we start to find out, well, who's the owner and who's the manager? Who actually has the day-to-day responsibility? In essence, who's the guiding mind that makes the decisions that has actually caused that unsafe condition to exist?
So suppose you've turned up at these premises and you're trying to locate, or you've narrowed down who the responsible person is. Then what happens? So what happens within the first hour or so of you guys turning up? What happens when there's...
We'll knock the door. Hopefully we'll explain that we're there. Hopefully we'll be welcomed in, and we go to explain, and we go to look at what the situation is. So if, for example, somebody says, I think there are fire exits that are locked, we'll take a look.
And what happens if it is locked?
If it is locked, a couple of things. One, we'll probably take pictures very quickly. And secondly, if they're required, we'll insist that they're unlocked.
Okay.
And we'll then make sure that the rest of the building is safe for the people to be there.
What if you can't find the key to the door?
What if you can't find the key to the door? If they can't
Which is
be
what
unlocked,
usually happens.
Yeah, can't find a key to the door, can't be unlocked, any other reason. It might not be a locked fire exit that's causing a dangerous condition. It might be something much more fundamental, in which case we might have to look at prohibiting or restricting part of the premises.
Okay.
So what that means is that we again issue a formal legal notice under the fire safety order that says that that building can't be used for that purposes, or that particular part of the building can't be used, or the whole building can't be used until that condition is put right.
So what's an enforcement notice?
So an enforcement notice is probably one notice in terms of severity below a prohibition notice.
Okay.
And that enforcement notice says, in essence, there are things not right within your business from a fire safety point of view, and that you need to put those right. It says that a degree of risk exists, but we can tolerate that risk for a period of time until they're put right. So we might say, well, we'll give you 9 weeks or 6 weeks or 13 weeks to put that right. A prohibition notice says that the risk is so serious in case of fire, of death or injury for anybody on the premises, that we need to prohibit or restrict straight away. And we can do that, and we can serve that on people that say, I think you've got to close that part of the business down, or move the people out from the flat above, or anything like that.
Can we just show the picture with the ceiling joists? Because, you know, I'd like to ask a question on that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, suppose, you know, you've got an Asian takeaway, it's an open plan restaurant, seating style that we, you know, that is kind of like the main style that does happen. So if you were to see these kind of things, what would you do under these circumstances?
There are no hard and fast rules, and it's not supposed to sound like a cop-out. It would depend on what else is around. So if there's a flat above that's rented out to other people, and there's no fire alarm, nothing that gives an early indication of fire, then we might have to, and I say might have to because we don't know what the rest of the situation's like, prohibit the flat upstairs and say you couldn't sleep there. Because the risk would be that a fire could take hold in the restaurant below and shoot straight up through to the flat above in next to no time, and the people above wouldn't have time or chance to get out. What we might also do, if there are other things in place, we might be able to say, well, actually, how quickly can you get it fixed? Okay, or we serve an enforcement notice says, I think you need to get that fixed, and give them reasonable time to do so.
What's the reasonable time? How long do people actually have once you've issued them with a enforcement notice to say, you know, get this work done?
It depends on what the situation is. And in some cases, we issue an enforcement notice for 13 weeks and say, we think you've got 13 weeks to put all of these matters right. In some cases, if we think that the risk is slightly higher, we might say, well, you've got a shorter time scale. Where possible, we want to work with the business to help them through it. We can give extensions of time to enforcement notices, but on those sort of situations, we normally like to see that they're making an effort. So, for example, part of their solution might be to put a fire alarm system in, and they say, well, first of all, we've got to get the money off the company, and we've got these quotes in. At least we can see that they are progressing towards compliance with the regulations.
But doesn't this involve a lot of money? You've got to buy the fire extinguishers, you've got to get these fire doors in place, you need the smoke alarms, you need those hinged doors which automatically shut behind, like some of the ones we've got in this building right here in the studios. So isn't this all just a lot of money making going on for a lot of organisations?
It's not about money making. We don't make a profit. We're paid out of the public purse, out of the taxes and council taxes that people pay in England. We don't make any money. We don't get a cut from anybody. We don't do any of this. Our role is independently and ethically to make sure people are safe from fire. What we do suggest is that people obviously take the risk assessment as their first starting point. We sometimes see that when we issue enforcement notices, people throw a lot of money at the problem, and it costs business money. If you have the risk assessment in the first place and a quality risk assessment, that will possibly save you money in the long run, because it says you don't need this, you need to do this, this and this. And some things don't necessarily require expensive systems. You can actually done by management practice, by better management of the building. And again, better management is virtually cost-free, because it just shows you things like keep your fire escapes clear, emergency lighting, you tested, etc.
You know, coming back to that, you know, those joists in the ceiling. So suppose, you know, you've gone and you've enforced the enforcement notice and stuff. So what happens to the people living above?
Sometimes, if we serve it on a flat above a premises, which we can do, sometimes we have to say you have to vacate your premises here and now. Often we'll involve the local housing agency so that if necessary they can be given emergency accommodation. But quite often the situation rests with the landlord because they've taken the money to put these people up, and it's their responsibility to make sure that they're safe, and if they can't do it within the premises they have to look elsewhere. That's obviously, in many respects of that, that's a civil matter that we don't get involved with. We just have to make sure that the area is safe.
Is there a situation where you've turned up, again, you know, going back to this joist and the ceiling, where the landlord's nowhere to be found?
We've had one where a landlord refused to come out and refused to give us his address. We just had it off a telephone number. And in that particular case, the situation wasn't to do with the ceiling joist, it's that they had to make their way pretty much past a catering kitchen in a restaurant where there was no fire protection, so a fire could have quite easily compromised their escape route. And in that situation, we took an action which is legal, although not widely used, which is to pin the notice to the door.
Okay.
The notice is pinned to the door, it's written in English, and there's no requirement in law for it to be translated into any other language. So if the prohibition notice is on a door and people do come across them, they should take note. As I said, that is used very, very rarely, but we have actually served one in that particular manner because there was nobody else available at the time for us to physically serve a notice on.
You know, UK has one of the toughest laws on fire safety anywhere in the world. So please people, all of you that are listening all around the world right now, do take note of some of the really good high standards, which is what I like to see it, high standards that are implemented in the UK. And this is all to do with saving lives, saving lives before the fire actually happens. So in terms of like prosecution, I understand you guys win every single case that ever goes to court?
In Nottinghamshire, I think we've taken 8 cases to court now in past 5 years, 6 years, and thankfully we've won all 8 cases. Around the UK, I cannot think of any fire safety case that's been taken in recent years that the fire service taking it has actually lost the case. I think we're taking, in some respects, the right cases to court with the right processes behind it that make sure that we actually get the conviction where it's warranted.
So you've got 100% conviction rate for the cases that you take to court then?
I think that's the case. I can't, as I said, I can't think of one nationally that has gone against the fire service, and certainly locally we have in Nottinghamshire we have a 100% conviction rate.
My goodness, people, you know, wouldn't like to be up against the fire service and all this. So what I'd like to know is, you know, suppose somebody, you know, we've got our viewers, we've got businesses, and they're sat at home thinking maybe we need to go and have another look at our business premises with a view of fire risk assessment and everything that they learnt from the programme, you know, today. So what would you advise them? What should be their first port call? It is back to this fire risk assessment.
It's back to the fire risk assessment. The last part of the fire risk assessment is to review it, is to review and monitor it. So if they've done one, it's a great starting point to go back to the fire risk assessment with new knowledge and have a look at it. If they haven't got a fire risk assessment, that's the best part. Download a fire risk assessment from either the community's website, or every local fire and rescue service will have on their website something about business support, business fire safety, and within there they'll have their own slightly different versions of a fire risk assessment template. Go through that exercise, have a look through it. Have a look at the guides. If you get daunted or it gets complicated, it does say in there, if you don't have the knowledge, seek the advice of a competent person. And that would be, have a look for a fire risk assessor. If necessary, you might have to buy that fire risk assessment process in.
Okay.
But in doing so, if you're looking for a fire risk assessor, the first thing to do is ask. Ask around, has anybody else in your business, community, business sector used a fire risk assessor? If they have, would they recommend it? If not, go through an internet search engine, Yellow Pages, any other device, and look for a fire risk assessor through there.
Right, we're coming up to the close of our programme, but I'm going to get this one quick question right in, Ian, if I may. And that is, suppose, like I said, our viewers are watching this programme, somebody's had their court papers come through, they're due up in court, you know, against you guys with the fire service. Is there anything they can do now to get themselves, you know, off?
The best thing to do is to do what you can to comply with the fire safety order and the legislation.
In the first place?
Not necessarily in the first place, but even after, if you've been caught, for example, and we've given a prohibition notice, or an enforcement notice, is do what you best you can do to comply with that notice, because that will show the court that you've since learnt the error of your ways and are taking things forward.
So there'll be some leniency shown in court?
That's a matter for the court and the judge. That's not necessarily a matter for ourselves. All we do is we present evidence and fact. It's up for the judge to form those sort of opinions.
Right, I'm really sorry people, that's all the time we've got for today. I hope we've covered all the questions that you were all asking as well in terms of fire safety and the really tough laws that we've got right here in the UK, and for compliance, because it does carry up to a 2-year prison sentence and unlimited fines. So if you have any questions after this programme, please do get in touch with me on my Facebook, and again with the fire service through their website. So thank you very much. And also next week's programme will be at 7 p.m. only during the month of Ramadan. So I'll catch you 7 o'clock next week. Thank you.